Scotch. Yeah. The national drink of Scotland is Scotch. Yeah. So it's Scotch is a whiskey. Now, only all Scotch, if it's labeled Scotch whiskey, has to be made in Scotland. Yeah, in the same way that champagne has to come from the Champagne region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling wine. So if you're a whiskey from a different part of the world, it can have another name. Yeah. Also, in the same way that bourbon comes from kind of the U.S., that is an American, kind of Kentucky-based whiskey. So Scotch can be a blend, which is a younger Scotch, where they blend in a bunch of things together to sort of give it the properties that it needs to get. So some things like, let me show you some examples of that. The Scottish one, famous grouse, always comes to mind of just a kind of blended Scotch that's good and there. The blends allow you to drink it while it's younger. Now, the real Scotch, for a real Scotch drinker, is an aged Scotch, and it is what's called a single malt, which means it comes from a single grain that's been made into a wort, W-O-R-T, fermented, and then put into barrels and aged. And most Scotch, it gets aged for 10 years in a barrel before it's ready for consumption. So most Scotch, there are some lowland Scotches, but a lot of Scotch comes from the Highlands. Yeah, sometimes the lowland Scotches, people say, oh, those are good beginner Scotches to drink because they don't have all the same characters that the northern Scotches have. And most Scotch drinkers that I've encountered, they tend not to bother so much with the lowland Scotches, but they have their favorite regions of the Highland Scotches that they like to drink. Yeah. I always say what's interesting about Scotland is that you can understand Scotland by tasting the Scotches. Like, you can really taste the difference in the landscape. You can taste the difference in the parts of the country, in the water and the peat that the water has come up through. They have different flavors to the Scotches that are there. So real connoisseurs of Scotch have their favorite regions of Scotland that they come from. Most Americans really like a lot of that. We hear about the Speyside Scotches. So this one region, many things Scotland Scotches are made there. Yeah, I tend to find those to be quite gentlemanly. Yeah, they're smooth. They have a lot of character to them, a lot of very subtle notes to those too. My favorites are the Isleys, and a lot of real connoisseurs like the western coast of Scotland. So an Islay Scotch, it's a part of the Rocky Sea, and they are much more smoky, they are much more peaty, they are much less gentlemanly, and they're a rougher Scotch. Yeah, so it is just a lot more flavor in a kind of very bold way. In some ways, you can taste the sea in those. There's other regions, northern up, like Skye, which has a really unique kind of Scotches, and then the Orkney Islands. So those have other notes and other flavors. Some people say they're much more honey-like, and I guess really just different in their notes. And then sometimes the middle part of Scotland, you've got notes of vanilla and butterscotch notes in it, and it's almost like that you can taste the heather and taste that part of Scotland. So it might, as you get to Scotland, there's also a Scottish tour of Scotch that you can take, so that you can all become a little bit of a connoisseur of all of that of Scotch.